Hi guys, Chris with Microsoft here with another exciting episode of What's New in Windows Server 2012. Okay, so today I'm going to put together an RMS. We're not going to be using the Contoso domain, we're going to use my 9Z domain for this one today. So, sorry I said RMS, I meant RDS. I'm going to do some RMS stuff later, but that'll be not in the What's New in. It'll be just kind of a separate thing we'll put together. So, logging on to this box, I've just joined it into the 9Z domain. And as you can see, it's part of an SBS domain, which means it already has RDS kind of more or less built into it, but it's SBS 2011, and I'm wanting to put in a remote desktop services gateway and show you guys a little bit about some of the new cool easy button way of getting RDS up and running. This thing is so easy to get going. It's not very hard to get it up, get it going, and also I want to show you some stuff about collections. So I want to show you how to kind of publish some apps, so you could do RemoteApp right with your RDS stuff together here. So anyway, we've already kind of configured this server. I apologize, this VM's going to run a little slow because it's on a host that's a little overwhelmed, and so I'm going to be pausing and unpausing the video while we wait for things to come back. Okay, and as you can see here, this is already joined to the 9Z domain, and the name of the server is going to be Access. And I want to go ahead and I'm going to break this off real quick just because I've kind of been turning the firewall off on all my internal machines. Just so I know that's not best practice. And I got Enhanced already turned off. We probably should configure the Windows updates. And I'm not going to mess with that at the moment. Just get it going so that it finds that there are updates, so that it'll go ahead and get that. So anyway, I'm going to go into Manage, and we're going to talk about the easy button method of getting remote desktop services on, and how to publish some apps, remote apps, and add roles and features. So in previous videos, you've seen me do the Add Roles and Features wizard. This is the only time we're going to do this with RDS, Remote Desktop Services installation. We use this other radio button. The reason that that radio button is separate is because this is a different kind of install than the others. So click that, click Next. So you can see we've got a standard deployment, meaning we're going to break things out over a bunch of different servers and make it really complicated and very high end for kind of a larger environment type of rollout, and that is the default radio button. But you can see there's this new radio button called Quick Start, which is just I have one server, I want everything on that one server, and I just want to get it up and running as quickly as possible, possibly even in my home lab environment, so that I can get access to my home lab environment from remotely. That's what you would select in that case. We're going to do Quick Start. I'm going to do session-based desktop and deployment rather than the virtual machine desktop deployment, just because I don't want to point these at VMs. I just want to do this as a local server type of thing. All right, so you can see that the difference is that we're publishing remote app programs and sessions. So, all right, so we've already got the access.9z.local selected, so we don't have to do anything else. It's already selected my credentials for me. And you can see it's going to install a connection broker, web access, and session host all on this one box. Now that's all but one of the roles that we need to actually get this project done. So we're going to let that kick along and think about it. Again, I've got a server with a little bit of disk contention, so we're going to see some slightly slow performance. At least I assume it's disk contention. And we're at pretty good amount of time there, 233, 600 milliseconds. Yeah, anytime you see this over 25 for a sustained period of time, you know that the problem's disks, which is expected in this case because I have a whole ton of VMs running on this one poor little box. Okay, so we've got almost everything we need. I'm going to go ahead and say restart if we need to, and I'm going to hit deploy, and it's going to start installing the connection broker, the web access, and the session host all on this one box. So I'm going to go ahead and let that start, and go ahead and pause the video. And it's finishing a reboot. Alright, let's log this thing back in. Okey-doke. This little SBS warning there. I think I'm going to take a second and get rid of this Activate Windows thing in the Action Center just to get that off the screen and clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to pause the video again for that as well. Okay, that's done. Alright, so after a reboot, it goes back in and it has a few last minute little secondary tasks that it has to process. So rather than have you sit here and watch these go, this does not require a second reboot. It's just kind of an extra couple little things that need to happen. Probably takes just a minute or two. So I'll pause the video again for that. Alright, so now what we have is this Remote Desktop Services server pool. A server pool, if you'll remember from previous episodes, is a grouping of servers that have similar roles installed on them, such as Active Directory, domain services, etc., etc. We're only managing one server here, and we get the Remote Desktop Services. This is one of the specialty server pools, because when you open it up, it's just not just a list of servers. You still have the list of servers and the servers group type of view that you would in any other role, but this one has some extra stuff, such as this nice, pretty new overview screen, which works out a little bit better in screen resolutions that haven't been tweaked. I've tweaked these so that they fit better on the screen. But as you can see, it's a real easy getting started and getting set up type of thing. So we've got some obvious stuff that needs to happen. Big, ginormous green plus sign. We need a gateway if we're going to make this work. So I click on that, and I tell it, hey, well, let's make access also be the gateway. So sticking with the single server, easy deployment, super easy button to get this done. We'll just go ahead and click that, add that in, and let it go scan the capability to add the access server that we're working with to the same pool of servers. Alright, now that it's found that access is in there, it's asking us what we're going to do as far as the certificate goes. So as you can see here, it's going to ask not so much what the SSL certificate is that we're going to use, it just wants to know, where are you going to access this sucker? This is kind of an important question. You understand that this is obviously, as a remote desktop gateway, is going to be hit most likely from the internet to get here. So what you need to do is not necessarily type in the name of the server itself on your network. So, you know, for instance, this was access.9z.local. We need to actually tell it what the client is going to be seeing from external. Now, the client would obviously see this as access.9z.com in this case. So that's what we're going to type here, because that would be the external HTTP address that we're going to hit from outside of the network in order to find him. And that will be what the certificate says. So whenever you're going to use an SSL cert, there's three things that matter. The begin and end validity period. You got to be inside of that, just like you would like your driver's license has got an issued date and it's got an expiration date. You have to be within that period for that certificate, or driver's license in that case, which is essentially a certificate. It has to be issued by something you trust. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, how to make sure you have that. And then third, it's got to match, just like the picture on your driver's license needs to match what your face looks like. When you are talking about a certificate for a website, the name needs to match what you saw in the HTTP : / blah, or in this case HTTPS. Anyway, that's what it's going to look like from outside, so I'm going to add that in. And it switches over to the installing screen, so now we're in progress for getting the role being installed on here. Alright, so it succeeded. Alright, so this is a neat little thing. It's got a little configure certificate wizard right here at the bottom. It's even got a little exclamation point to remind you that this needs to be done. If you miss it though, if you miss getting this wizard, that's fine. You can get back it again with this tasks, and you can see this edit deployment properties. Where that will take me is to this tab that says certificates. This is the page that would have been brought up if we'd clicked it from the end of the wizard. So there's a couple of different things what you can do. Now, in a minute, I'm going to actually use a different certificate, but just in case you wanted to set this up for playing around with in your own lab, and you don't happen to have like a wildcard cert or a cert that you already have mapped to, in my case, like access.9z.com, what I can do is I can go ahead and create a self-signed certificate. So let's just call this access.9z.com, give it a password, and we're going to store this out on the desktop so I can get at it real easy. We'll call it throw me away because we're only going to use it for a little while. And you have to check the allow the certificate to be trusted, or to be added to the trusted root certificate authority on the destination computer. And we click OK. And then every one of these you're going to have to go through, and you're going to need to do an apply before you can move on to the next step. So it takes it a moment for each one of these. But once you've created it, then you don't have to create the certificate again. You just need to go and attach to the one that you have. It's a real easy way to get all four of the roles a certificate, but there isn't one like shotgun effect, just hit them all at once type of a setup for this. You're going to have to do this 4 different times. So you'll need to go out, find the certificate, and then click apply, and then do it again 4 times. So I'm going to speed that up just a little bit here. And there it is. Okay, so you'll notice that after the first one is in here, you're now able to go and put some more of these in. Now, this is an important distinction on the fact that this level is untrusted. That's because we created what's called a self-signed certificate. By creating a self-signed certificate, we did tell it the right name. I told you that we were going to hit this at access.9z.com, and we did have a correct validity period because it creates it today, and it's going to be good for years to come. But the problem is that nobody in the world is going to trust this certificate because it was given to itself by itself. Right? Nobody in the world trusts access.9z.com. It's just some random server on the internet. For it to be trusted by a computer that's going to access this server, it's going to have to either add access.9z.com to its trusted certificate store. In other words, it makes it one of the the trusted locations to to allow certificates to be trusted from when they get issued. Or you need to get a certificate from somebody who is trusted, and every operating system, by default is going to have a certain set of trusted authorities that they get to by default, and so that's something you can actually look at. That's something that's available. Actually, I'm not going to use Internet Explorer. I'm going to use the more administrative, the more admin kind of way to do this. So I'm going to need this in a minute anyway. So I'm going to go and get this administrative command prompt up. I'm going to go ahead and launch an MMC, minimize that because I'm going to need to use it here in just a minute to deal with the activation issues that I was having. So if we snap in the certificates to the console for the computer account for the local computer, we'll notice that under the trusted root cert authorities, these are a list of a whole bunch of the default places that you would go out and automatically trust. Anybody who is issuing certificates that is on this list, your browser, your computer is automatically going to trust that that came from where it says it came from. For instance, I use the driver's license. I live in Oklahoma, so any cop that pulls me over is going to look at my Oklahoma driver's license. When he asks, well, who are you? So my name's Chris. Well, he doesn't know that, right? He needs to look at my driver's license. He trusts that the state of Oklahoma has validated that I am who I say I am, and he then trusts the driver's license because it was issued by a trusted authority. In that case, Oklahoma is the Trusted Route Certification Authority. And the other two pieces of information he's looking for are the validate date, let's make sure that the certificate's not expired, that the driver's license is not expired, and that I am who I say I am via the picture. Do I look like who I say I am? So in the case of earlier, we used the website address access.9z.com, and if the website address that you typed in was access.9z.com, then, well, there you go. It's matching those three things. So you'll also notice that there's a 9z, because this guy is joined to the 9z domain. There is a CA that's involved with that as well. So you'll see that it does not trust that certificate, because even though we would find it in the personal certificates because he created it, it's not in the root cert authority, and that's going to be the same thing for any client that tries to hit this guy. Anyway, I can now do a select existing cert, since we already did one of these and threw it up here in this throwmeaway.pfx. One moment. There we go. Allow. We can continue with this process of attaching the cert, clicking apply for the next few of these, and then go down here, select again. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video until I get all of these done, so you don't have to watch me rinsing and repeating. And they're all done. Alright, so at this point in time, hitting the RD connection broker, Access Gateway, they've all got a certificate that's mounted on them. So the other thing we would need to configure is remote desktop licensing server. By default, after putting this on, you can play around with this on your home computers for 120 days before you start seeing it throwing a fit and locking you out. But you can run fully featured for several months, and I'm pretty sure MSDN has keys for that now, but this will get you the capability to run just fine. So this is broken up. That's your deployment overview. I'm not going to do the RD licensing right away, but so I've got my deployment servers here. So I've got my gateway, web access, the connection broker, and session host all configured here. Down at the bottom, you'll see kind of the overall setup grid, and that's some of the main things that you need done. Another thing you're going to want to do, this gets out of the nice, pretty new GUI interface that's been built for remote desktop services. Probably the best way to do this is go to servers, then right-click on your server and go to the gateway manager. When I go into the gateway manager, this is going to look like the way that you've managed these in the past, and I'm going to mess this up, so I can't remember exactly where I go. Connection authorization, I think, is where I'm looking for. What you want to go in here is go into the properties for your CAP, and then we need to see if I can find device redirection for all clients. That may not be where I'm looking for. Maybe it's this that I'm looking for, the resource authorization policies. There we go. That's what we're looking for. So what you want to do is you want to come into here, this resource authorization policies, and under the policy that's been configured for you, go into properties, and then under network resource, change this to allow users to connect to any network resources if you want to be able to hit anything on the domain regardless. Like if you want to be able to use the remote gateway, the remote desktop gateway, to go hit something by IP address, or by hit something inside your domain that is not connected to the domain. This just tells it, yeah, I don't care. If it's something you can route to it. Just be a gateway. So that's about the only thing you got to configure outside this GUI interface. So there we are. We have a setup, a basic, pretty standard setup. And we want to test a couple of things here. So, okay, so open it up in a web browser. I want to make sure that, first of all, can we even get a, oops, should have said yes to that. Do I even have the ability to route out to that address? And I do. Okay, so HTTPS did actually answer on access.9z.com. Just testing from the local machine here real quick to do a quick test. As you can see, we have a certificate issue. If we continue to the website, I'll be able to look at the certificate by hitting View Certificate. So here are the three things we're looking for that I told you about. Validity period. Has this guy's essentially driver's license expired yet? No. We're in between that period of time right here. As you can see, it's 6/11. It's valid as of today. It was issued to access.9z.com. All right, so did the picture on the driver's license match what we saw up here? HTTPS access.9z.com, access.9z.com. Ah, cool. Yeah, then they did. Issued by access.9z.com. Well, who trusts access.9z.com? Nobody does, right? Not even the guy who issued the certificate. There's a way to fix that. We have to trust this. So we need to actually have the certificate installed to be able to do that. But for now, I can see that RDWeb is actually working, and we can just test and make sure that that's capable of even coming up. And using the address, as you can see here, this is the neat little new remote desktop and remote app connection, and it's coming up. So we got a pretty good test here. So we have the certificate that we could bring in and trust ourselves with here, or we could test this on another client. And speaking of the client, this is a little Windows 8 box. I just copied that same certificate over to it, so let's just imagine that maybe if you were going to try this just using self-signed certs only, certainly you could do that. What you want to do is make sure that you get, sorry, let me get my microphone adjusted a little bit better here. What you want to do is make sure that you get the certificate over to whatever machines that you're going to be accessing this thing on, and you could definitely get away with that. So let's look at the certificates on this machine. This is just a standard little Windows 8 box that I stood up, so he's shouldn't be anyway. Let's take a little look at his config. So set US, yeah, so you can see it's not actually joined. It's just Contoso Client 1, not actually joined to the domain. Otherwise it would say user domain Contoso. Alright, so let's take a look at the certificates on this box. On the computer account or the local computer, we go into the trusted, get over here so we can rate you. Root cert authorities. So there you go. Looks kind of the same as before, right? We don't have anything really spectacular in here, and we certainly do not currently trust access.9z.com. So let's make sure that I have DNS working properly on this little work group joined computer. Make sure I can get out to access.9z.com. And let's go to the HTTPS. And we do get an error because of the certificate. Nothing up my sleeve here. It's the same thing. Again, we do not trust this access.9z.com person. So let's fix that. You don't see it in the list here. No access.9z.com. Let's put one in there. So I double click that cert. This is as easy as it used to be. You had to import it. I'm just going to show you that it's now easy enough because this is a huge win for Windows 8 here. Local machine. Alright, so we're going to say yes, I do in fact want to import this throwmeaway.pfx doohickey. It will ask for the password. This is one way that you could kind of quasi-protect against weird things happening with your certificates. And next, and I'm going to go ahead and pick where I want it. I don't trust it to put it in the right place, so I'm going to put it in the root cert authorities. I'm going to say OK, say next, say finish, and bang, it's in there. So let's refresh this list, and suddenly I trust anything access.9z.com says. So, I mean, even if access.9z.com were to hand me out a certificate for some other website, as long as it was submitted to me via access.9z.com, I'm going to trust it. All right, so let's go back in here and just kind of make sure that our certificate did work the way we expected it to. And http access.9z.com. As you can see, we do not have a certificate error this time. And let's go in here to RD Web. Now it's wanting to add on our remote desktop services from Microsoft there. So okay, so that's in there. I have full screen capture on this, so that should work. Okay, so you see we got the little lock, right? So at any point in time I can hit the lock and I can see access.9z.com has identified the site as access.9z.com. It's encrypted, we don't have an error. All three of the major things run, are matching. We trust this guy. He says he is who he says he is, and he looks like who he says he is, and he's in the validity period, so now we trust it. This is your new cool little gateway web page. Let's go in there and look at that. So this was for 9Z, so I'm going to log on as my 9Z account. And I'm going to go ahead and say it's a private computer, even though it may or may not be. Alright, so I got connect to a remote PC, so I could go in here and connect to somebody internally on that network, 10.8 maybe, and go to 800 by 600 and connect. And you'll notice that I can actually go straight through and get to that server. And now this is telling me that we don't have a certificate for hyper-v.9c.local, which is actually the name of that 10.0.0.8. But it does allow me to connect into it, so that's pretty cool stuff right there. All right, so we see that it's working, and that's all well and good and cool and awesome. This right here, the remote app stuff, we haven't really done anything with this yet, so let's do that next. So remote app is kind of one of the really cool things that you can do if you work outside of your home and occasionally need to get into things on your house, in your house. This could come in handy for you. So there's a new concept called collections, and with collections you can build groups of things like servers and stuff. One of the cool parts is this quick session connection. We can put remote app in here. So let's publish some remote app programs. What that means is I'm going to be able to take a program that's running on this server and then make that program available to me from outside my network. So you can do goofy stuff like calculator, you could use paint, this could be fairly useful. Of course, you're already kind of doing it, but it gives you another way to get there. I find this to be incredibly valuable, the Server Manager, because Windows RT won't run Server Manager. This is one way I can get my Surface RT to run Server Manager by remote apping it. So by having it in Remote App, I can get in and manage all of my servers from my Surface RT. So let's throw in PowerShell. ISE, I prefer ISE to regular, and maybe WordPad, and that's all great, but let's add some additional stuff. Here are some things that I have found incredibly useful for me to have access to outside of the network. iExplore. I just published Internet Explorer running on this box from outside the network. Now what does that mean? That means that whenever I run Internet Explorer, I'm really running it on that server. So if I'm outside my network and I need to get in and manage my Sonic wall, manage the Blade chassis, manage anything that's inside of my house, I can do it using the IP addresses and everything from this server to get to that box. Another one that might be very, very handy for you. 32. Publish command prompt. You see that could be very, very useful. So we've got several different programs now that we're going to toss in there. We're going to go ahead and publish those out into the collection. And we should be able to validate that here in a moment. as soon as it finishes the publishing process when I look at it on the website. And then we get a confirmation. It says 8 remote app programs were published. Click close. And let's switch back over to that Windows 8 machine real quick. Refresh the page. And there they are. So I could run the command prompt right from here. Now I could go ahead and just click on that and do that, but I've got a lot cooler way in Windows 8 to actually make this work. So we're going to ditch the website from here on out. We don't need it anymore now that we've validated that everything is working. So I don't need the certificates piece anymore. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a search for remote app and desktop connections right here. So remote app and desktop connections is this neat little wizard. I can access remote app and desktops. Now, nothing up my sleeve. You saw what's on my start menu. There's really not much of anything here. That's about to change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say https://access.9z.com/. Now, I'm not going to remember this, but what I do is I always look down here. This always helps me. All right, so RD web feed .aspects. Click next. Says it's already ready. Watch out because it could actually add stuff to your local computer. Yeah, well, that's what I want it to do. Now it's going to ask me to authenticate because this is not a member of the 9Z domain. So I'm going to go ahead and make it connect with me. And get it connected. So it should discover the apps. And there it goes. It's now saying work resources automatically connected. All is well. We're connected for 8 different programs. Finish. Okay, and it'll keep an eye on them too. So it will remember which, it'll remember to go out and check and see if new apps have been published from time to time and add them in here. Where do I find these? Well, here's the magic. Look at this. Here's all the stuff we just published. So now, for instance, if I open up the command prompt and I say, I want to go ahead and say, don't ask me again for this because it's all cool. Now I've already got my command prompt up and running right here, but I'm launching another one, right? So how is that useful? Well, we're about to see as soon as this thing finishes connecting. And blam, there it is. So I've got a command prompt and I've got a command prompt. So what can I do with that? What does that mean for me? Well, first off, let's look at the icons down here. First, you'll see they look very similar, except one is actually a remote app and the other one is local. So let's prove it. Host name, client 1. Host name. Ooh, access. So what does this mean for you? What am I actually doing? Well, I'm running this through a remote app connection. I'm actually looking at a command prompt on that server. Close this. Close everything out here. I don't need any of this stuff anymore. So just to kind of keep it so that everybody understands what I'm looking at. You know, for instance, ipconfig, you can see I'm not the same. Right? And this would obviously work outside of my network anywhere in the world that I wanted to hit this now that it's all configured, assuming you got your firewall set up right, which is mostly just web stuff, right? 8443, and that you have an IP address that you can point it at and stuff like that. So it's really incredibly easy to set up on the Windows side, and just however difficult it is to set up from your router. But watch this. Okay, so if I'm in command prompt, obviously I can launch calculator pretty easy, right? Calc. Now I've got 2 calculators running, but one of these is not like the other one. See, you can tell. So this is a calculator running on my Windows 8 machine. This is a calculator that's actually running on the server, but being presented to me as calculator. Server manager. Actually, I don't have to do that because I published it, right? I can go back to the start menu and I can run server manager from right there. And there it launches up the server manager actually on that server. It just looks like a local app. You can always get that little designator to tell you that it is a remote app type thing. But if I open up the remote desktop services and look at those collections that we just published a moment ago, and you see our little quick session collection and all the remote app stuff that we put in there. Now we're looking at the exact same thing here that we were over there. By having the command prompt published, that I can pretty much get access to anything on the machine. That's why I always publish it for me. So MSTSC, I'm launching remote desktop connection, but I'm launching it from within that server. So I can then get out and do whatever I wanted. If I go in here and just a moment, I'm sorry. Let me pause the recording for a second. Sorry about that. The bug is here at the house with me today, and the wife is out running errands. So, okay, so there you go, Internet Explorer. Here's why I like to run this. One of these is RemoteApp, and the other one is not. So this can be helpful if, for instance, I want to go in and go launch access into the blade chassis. So if I were to want to it's going to get stuck though because I didn't tweak the Internet Explorer settings so that my blade chassis would come up. But you get the idea. So I get access to things inside my network that I wouldn't otherwise have access to from outside my network. Okay, so a couple of other little cleanup deals. It's not it's not cool to talk about all this stuff without talking about how to do this in a more enterprise environment. In a more enterprise environment, obviously, you are not going to probably stick with the self-signed certificate. You're going to get tired of that. And if, like, for instance, on my Windows phone, there are a couple of applications that I can't remote app with because I don't have an actual valid certificate. So you're going to need a valid certificate that the phone would be able to understand in order to launch some of those applications. There are some apps that let you bypass that, but at some point you're going to get sick and tired of messing around with this whole self-signed certificate business. So you might buy one for yourself, or if you've decided, hey, we're finished testing on this thing, we're ready to go out and deploy, it's not hard to swap that around. I need to go get the certificate that makes this work for me. And there I have it. So this is my wildcard cert. So I like DigiCert. I used to buy a lot of stuff from GoDaddy. I still get all my domains from them, but I'm really digging DigiCert. So I have this wildcard cert that I got for my 9Z stuff. And that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to come in here. We've decided that we want to change this configuration. So we're going to go back to the overview page, and we'll go into tasks, and we're going to go ahead and edit the deployment properties. So all I have to do to change this up is go in here, select a different certificate. In this case, we're going to go pick that exported wildcard cert for 9Z and get the password in there for that. And click OK, and then just like before, so what we're doing is we're just replacing the existing certificate that we had self-signed with the wildcard certificate that's actually purchased from a certification authority and actually valid and trusted and not self-signed and carted around on a USB flash drive. From machine to machine. And you'll see that after it goes to success and finishes refreshing, this is going to go from untrusted to trusted because we're now using a certificate that we know and love and adore. So I want to walk through here and get that done real fast and pause the video. As exciting as it is to watch someone do all this wonderful stuff, will just not make you be tortured by that. And that should be about the end of that right there. Cool, all trusted. So, should be able to launch this Access website again. That look on that chick's face is creeping me out. There we go. So, we went straight into lock without any of the errors because now we can see that this is issued to anything at 9z.com and it's a DigiCert certificate good until, well, about a year from now, well, a little less than a year from now, so about 9 more months this thing is still good. So that's my the reason that this isn't coming up with any kind of an error. If you did put your certs in your clients, that's fine. It doesn't hurt as long as nobody compromised your box. It doesn't hurt on the client side to still have those certificates in the certificate store. But if you wanted to test it, and once you've got it tested, you're happy with it, and you want rid of this, all you got to do is just do what I'm doing here. Go back into the MMC, local computer for certificates, bring it back up, go into the trusted certificate authority, certificates, and yank this sucker out. I no longer trust the mraccess.9z.com as a reliable source of certificate loving on the inner tubes. So now when I go to access.9z.com, RDWeb, should get straight in without any kind of problems. And strange that it doesn't even show the little lock key mechanism doohickey. Let me get this with less garbage behind it here. Let me just go to the root of the web. There we go. Get my little lock doohickey up there, view, and you can see that this is, once it's now pulled that out and didn't cache it or anything. So, and pretty much the only thing you really would need to do if you wanted to keep this thing in production is you're going to need to come in and you're going to need to go reconfigure this to have a licensing server, because at some point in time you're going to run out of your 120 days and you're going to need to actually activate a license server that's going to get you further than the 120 days. And there we go, it's done. So that's pretty much all there is to getting that part started. And so it's going to go ahead and put that role on the box, and I'm going to pause so you don't have to watch the little line creep along. Okay, so we're succeeded, and we've got that ready to rock and roll. So we have a licensing server. We're no longer a bunch of tasks that need to be done here to get all that done and up and running. All that would be required at this point is to actually give it some licensing. Just having the licenses is only the first step, obviously. It's pretty simple to get there. So easiest way, quickest way is just click on servers, right click on the server that you just set up as their licensing guy, and then go to RD Licensing Manager. We come up here and you can see that we've got a non-activated status on this. We've got the built-in per device stuff that comes. This has been kind of the same story forever, so I won't torture you guys with how to do this, but you need to activate the server, and you need to come through and tell it, well, what kind of what are you going to do as far as what kinds of, I'm not going to fill that up right here on YouTube, but anybody who's been working with this stuff for very long, this isn't huge, not massively different. So anyway, that is how we get to just kind of playing around with RDS and RemoteApp and getting all that set up, maybe in a test environment for you to play with, or maybe just to put it in your own personal lab at the house. And then hopefully, if you ever need to branch that out to multiple servers, this obviously we get a little more advanced, but that at least to get you into production in a mid-level micro business up through mid-level type of a setup for companies who need this type of thing. But anyway, I guess I'll come back and end the video, and then I'll finish fixing this up for myself. And by the way, you can hit access.9z.com. I was going to put out an additional kind of a test bed server on the Contoso network that you could kind of play around with if you wanted to remote app, but I didn't want to just kill my server. Otherwise, I'd give you guys all logins to the thing to kind of play with it and go in and see the remote app stuff. But just for trying to keep my server a little busy, I thought I'd show you instead how to kind of put one together for yourself. But anyway, that should definitely help get you started. So anyway, guys, this has been Chris with Microsoft, and as always, thanks for watching. If you found anything about this useful or interesting, please give it a quick like, and feel free to subscribe to my channel in the link below. And my blog is at 9z.com. Real easy to remember. It's just the last number and the last letter .com. It's got links to my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and all my social inner tube stuff. So, again, thanks a ton for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.